The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Kensington Palace as Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews adjusted her earpiece for what would unknowingly be one of her final shifts. For 8 years, she had served as the lead protection officer for Prince George, watching him grow from a curious toddler into a thoughtful young boy who asked questions that often surprised the adults around him. Sarah had built her career on precision and dedication. Her colleagues respected her unwavering focus, and the royal family trusted her completely. She knew every entrance, every potential threat, and every detail of the young prince's daily routine. Her life revolved around ensuring his safety, from morning lessons to afternoon activities in the palace grounds. That particular morning felt different somehow. Prince George, now 10 years old, had been unusually quiet during breakfast. Sarah noticed how he carefully observed the staff members who served his meal, asking polite questions about their families, and thanking each person individually. This wasn't entirely unusual for him, but there was something more deliberate about his interactions today. As they walked through the palace corridors toward his private study, Prince George suddenly stopped near a large window overlooking the courtyard. Below, several security personnel were conducting their routine patrol changes. Sarah watched as the young prince's eyes followed the movements of her team members, his expression thoughtful and almost concerned. "Mrs. Matthews," he said quietly, using the formal address he had been taught. "May I ask you something about your work?" Sarah nodded, curious about what had captured his attention so completely. She had always appreciated his genuine interest in the people around him, but today his question seemed to carry more weight than usual. The prince turned to face her directly, his young face serious beyond his years. "Do you ever think about what you might do if you weren't here protecting me?" The question caught Sarah off guard. In all her years of service, she had rarely allowed herself to consider life beyond the palace walls. Her identity had become so intertwined with her role that the thought of anything else seemed almost foreign. Sarah found herself pausing longer than usual before responding. She looked at this remarkable young boy who somehow managed to think beyond his own immediate world, even at such a young age. "I suppose I haven't given it much thought, Your Royal Highness," she admitted honestly. "This work has been my life for so long." Prince George nodded slowly as if he had expected that answer. "I've been thinking about things lately," he said, his voice carrying a maturity that sometimes surprised even his parents. "About how the people who take care of me might have dreams and wishes of their own." Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, though she couldn't quite identify what it was. The prince's words seemed to open a door in her mind that had been closed for years. As they continued their walk to his study, Sarah found herself seeing the palace corridors differently. For the first time in years, she wondered what lay beyond these walls, what other purposes her skills and experience might serve. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying, like standing at the edge of an unknown landscape. Later that afternoon, during Prince George's art lesson, Sarah stood quietly by the door as she always did. But instead of scanning for potential threats as usual, she found her attention drawn to the prince's conversation with his art teacher, Mrs. Henderson. They were discussing a painting of a bustling marketplace, and George was asking detailed questions about the different people in the scene. "What do you think that woman there does when she goes home?" Prince George asked, pointing to a figure in the background of the painting. "Does she have children? Does she worry about them the way my parents worry about me?" Mrs. Henderson smiled at his thoughtful questions, encouraging him to imagine the stories behind each painted figure. Sarah watched as the young prince carefully added details to his own artwork, which appeared to be a drawing of the palace staff during their daily routines. She could see figures that resembled the gardeners, the kitchen staff, and even what looked like her own team of security officers. Each figure was drawn with careful attention, as if he wanted to capture something important about each person. During a quiet moment, Prince George approached Sarah with his sketchbook. "I've been drawing the people who take care of our family," he explained, showing her a surprisingly detailed portrait of herself standing alert by a doorway. "I wanted to remember how dedicated you all are, but I also started wondering what makes each of you happy outside of work." The drawing was remarkably observant for a 10-year-old's work. Sarah could see that he had captured not just her professional stance, but something in her expression that suggested both strength and perhaps a hint of longing she hadn't realized she showed. "It's very good, Your Royal Highness," she said, though the portrait stirred something uncomfortable within her. Prince George continued flipping through his sketchbook, showing her drawings of other staff members. "I asked Mr. Williams in the kitchen what he likes to do on his days off," he shared. "He told me he builds model airplanes and dreams of learning to fly real ones someday. I never knew that about him before." Sarah found herself genuinely surprised by this information about a colleague she had worked alongside for years. "Henderson told me she once wanted to open her own art gallery," Prince George continued, "and James from the garden said he's been writing a book about plants in his spare time." With each revelation, Sarah realized how little she knew about the personal lives and aspirations of the people she saw every day. The prince closed his sketchbook and looked up at her with those earnest eyes that seemed to see more than most adults. "I think sometimes people forget to ask each other about their dreams," he said simply. "But I think dreams are important. Don't you?" Sarah nodded, though she couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked her about her dreams, or when she had last allowed herself to have any. That evening, as Sarah completed her security reports, Prince George's words echoed in her mind. She found herself thinking about a time, years ago, when she had considered teaching at the police academy, sharing her expertise with new officers. The idea had seemed impractical then, given her prestigious position, but now it resurged with unexpected appeal. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a different kind of purpose, one that might use her skills to help others grow rather than simply to protect one person. The thought felt both foreign and strangely natural, like remembering a song she used to love but had forgotten how to sing. The following week brought an unexpected visitor to the palace. Detective Chief Inspector Robert Clark, Sarah's former mentor from Scotland Yard, had come to discuss security protocols for an upcoming royal event. During their professional meeting, he mentioned something that would prove to be pivotal. "Sarah, I don't know if you've heard, but the Metropolitan Police Academy is launching a new training program," he said during a brief break in their discussions. "They're looking for experienced officers to develop curriculum for protection services. Your expertise would be invaluable." The opportunity hung in the air between them, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. She had always respected Chief Inspector Clark's judgment, and the fact that he thought of her for such a role felt significant. "I hadn't heard about the program," she admitted, trying to keep her voice professionally neutral despite the sudden interest stirring within her. Prince George appeared in the doorway just then, having finished his French lesson earlier than expected. He greeted Chief Inspector Clark politely, but Sarah noticed how his eyes seemed to take in the conversation between the two officers. The young prince had developed an almost uncanny ability to sense when something important was being discussed. "Chief Inspector Clark," Prince George said with his characteristic directness, "do you work with many police officers who teach other officers?" Sarah watched as Clark's eyebrows raised slightly, clearly impressed by the specificity of the question from someone so young. "Yes, Your Royal Highness," Clark replied. "Some of our best officers become instructors. They help prepare new officers for challenging situations and share knowledge that can only come from real experience." Prince George nodded thoughtfully, his gaze shifting briefly to Sarah before returning to the Chief Inspector. "That sounds like very important work," the prince observed. "Helping people learn how to protect others must make a big difference." Sarah felt as though the conversation was somehow being guided by the young prince, though his questions seemed natural and innocent enough. After Chief Inspector Clark left, Prince George asked Sarah if she could walk with him in the palace gardens. This wasn't unusual, but something in his manner suggested he had something specific on his mind. They strolled past the rose beds where gardeners were preparing for the autumn season. "Mrs. Matthews," Prince George began, "the Chief Inspector seemed to think very highly of your abilities." Sarah acknowledged this with a modest nod, unsure where the conversation was leading. "Do you think there might be other ways to use those abilities to help people?" The question was gentle but direct, and Sarah realized that the young prince had somehow understood the significance of Clark's visit. "I suppose there could be, Your Royal Highness," she replied carefully, "though I've never really considered it seriously." Prince George stopped walking and turned to face her. "I've been thinking about what you said the other day about how this work has been your life for so long," he said. "But I also think about what Chief Inspector Clark mentioned, about teaching other officers. It seems like you could help protect many more people that way." Sarah was struck by the mature reasoning behind his words. This 10-year-old had somehow grasped concepts about purpose and impact that many adults struggled with. "That's a very thoughtful way to look at it," she said, feeling a growing respect for his insight. "I want you to know," Prince George continued, "that while I'm grateful for everything you do to keep me safe, I also want the people who care for me to be happy and fulfilled." His words carried a weight that seemed far beyond his years, and Sarah felt something shift fundamentally in how she viewed her role and her future. That evening, Sarah found herself doing something she hadn't done in years. She sat at her small kitchen table in her modest flat and began researching the Metropolitan Police Academy's new training program. The more she read about the curriculum development role, the more intrigued she became. It would involve creating courses on executive protection, threat assessment, and crisis management, drawing directly from her years of real-world experience. The position would mean leaving behind the prestige and security of royal protection, but it offered something she hadn't realized she was missing: the chance to shape the next generation of officers. As she reviewed the job requirements, Sarah discovered that her unique background made her an ideal candidate. Few people had her combination of tactical expertise and sustained high-level protection experience. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Prince George approached her before his morning lessons with a carefully handwritten note. "I wrote something for you," he said, his voice quiet but determined. "I hope you don't mind that I shared some thoughts." Sarah unfolded the note, written in the prince's neat handwriting. It read, "Dear Mrs. Matthews, I have been thinking about talents and how they can help the most people. You have protected me very well, but I believe your knowledge could protect many more people if you taught other officers. I want you to know that I would be proud to know that my protection officer became a teacher who helped train many other protectors. If you decide to explore this opportunity, you have my support and gratitude." The note was signed simply Prince George and included a small drawing of a police academy building with the words, "Making a Difference," written underneath. Sarah felt her eyes moisten as she read his words. The mature reasoning and genuine care behind the message touched her deeply. "Your Royal Highness," she began, but Prince George held up his hand gently. "You don't need to say anything right now," he said with surprising wisdom. "But I wanted you to know that sometimes the best way to serve is to help others learn how to serve too." The simple profundity of his statement stayed with Sarah throughout the day. During lunch, Prince George did something unprecedented. He asked if he could speak with his parents about Sarah's situation. While royal protection officers were never discussed in detail with the children for security reasons, Prince George had somehow understood the broader implications of career development and personal fulfillment. Sarah learned later that the young prince had approached his parents with characteristic directness. He had explained his observations about her dedication over the years and his belief that her expertise could benefit many more people through teaching. His parents were reportedly impressed by both his thoughtfulness and his mature understanding of the situation. That afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected call from the Prince and Princess of Wales's private secretary. They requested a meeting to discuss her career aspirations and potential opportunities for professional development. The meeting was scheduled for the following day, and Sarah realized that Prince George's gentle intervention had set significant events in motion. As she prepared for bed that night, Sarah reflected on how a 10-year-old's thoughtful observations had opened doors she hadn't even known existed. Prince George's influence hadn't been forceful or manipulative, but rather gentle and genuinely caring. He had somehow seen possibilities for her future that she had been too focused on duty to notice herself. The young prince had demonstrated a kind of leadership that prioritized the well-being and growth of others, even when it might mean personal changes for himself. Sarah began to understand that his gentle guidance was perhaps one of the most powerful forms of influence she had ever encountered. The meeting with the Prince and Princess of Wales took place in their private study, a room Sarah had secured countless times but never actually sat in as a guest. The atmosphere was warm but respectful, and both parents expressed genuine interest in her professional development and future aspirations. "Sarah," the princess began, "George has shared with us some very thoughtful observations about your service and potential opportunities ahead. We wanted you to know that we've always valued not just your professional excellence, but also the positive influence you've had on our son." Sarah felt honored by their recognition and surprised by Prince George's apparent advocacy on her behalf. The prince continued, We understand that Chief Inspector Clark has approached you about a teaching position at the Metropolitan Police Academy. We want you to know that while we would be sorry to lose someone of your caliber, we also recognize the value of career growth and new challenges. Their supportive tone made it clear that they viewed her potential departure not as abandonment, but as professional evolution. George has helped us see that sometimes the greatest service comes through sharing knowledge and experience with others, the princess added. He seems to believe quite strongly that your expertise could benefit many more people through teaching than through protecting just one family, important as that role has been. Sarah was moved by their understanding and by Prince George's continued influence on the situation. Your Royal Highnesses, I want you to know that serving your family has been the greatest honor of my career, she said. But I must admit that the teaching opportunity does appeal to me in ways I hadn't expected. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering practical matters like transition timelines and training her replacement. Both parents emphasized that any decision should be based on what felt right for Sarah's professional growth, not on any sense of obligation to maintain the status quo. Later that day, Prince George found Sarah in the security office reviewing some routine reports. "Did you have a good meeting with my parents?" he asked with the directness that had become his trademark. Sarah confirmed that the conversation had gone well and that his parents had been very supportive. "I'm glad," Prince George said simply. "I told them that I think good people should have the chance to do good work in different ways." His matter-of-fact tone suggested that advocating for others' career development was simply a natural thing to do. Over the following days, Sarah found herself having increasingly detailed conversations with Chief Inspector Clark about the academy position. The role would involve developing comprehensive training programs, mentoring new instructors, and occasionally lecturing on specialized topics. It represented a significant career pivot, but one that would utilize all of her accumulated expertise. Prince George continued to show interest in her decision-making process, though always in his characteristically gentle way. During one of their routine walks, he asked thoughtful questions about what teaching might involve and whether she thought she would enjoy helping other officers learn. "I think you would be a very good teacher," he told her one afternoon. "You've taught me many things about being careful and observant, even though that wasn't officially your job." Sarah realized that he was right. She had indeed been teaching him informally for years, sharing lessons about awareness and personal safety that had become second nature to her. The young prince's steady encouragement and genuine belief in her potential gave Sarah the confidence to seriously consider this major career change. His influence was remarkable not because it was pushy or insistent, but because it was thoughtful, caring, and focused entirely on what might be best for her professional fulfillment and personal growth. 3 weeks after her initial conversation with Chief Inspector Clark, Sarah made her decision. She formally applied for the position at the Metropolitan Police Academy, a choice that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. The application process moved quickly, given her exceptional qualifications and strong recommendations from her current supervisors. When Sarah received the call confirming her acceptance, she felt a mixture of excitement and sadness. The teaching position would begin in 2 months, allowing time for a proper transition and the training of her replacement. She had worked too hard to build the royal protection protocols to leave them in anything less than perfect order. Prince George was among the first people she told about her acceptance. His reaction was immediate and genuine delight. "Mrs. Matthews, that's wonderful news," he exclaimed, his face lighting up with obvious pleasure. "I know you're going to help so many police officers become better at their jobs." His enthusiasm made her feel proud of her decision in a way she hadn't expected. "I want you to know," Sarah told him, "that your questions and observations played a big part in helping me see this opportunity. You have a remarkable ability to help people think about their lives in new ways." Prince George seemed pleased but not surprised by this acknowledgement. "I just think people should have the chance to use their talents in ways that make them happy," he replied with his characteristic simplicity. "And I think you'll be much happier teaching other people how to protect families like mine." His mature understanding of the situation continued to amaze Sarah. The next few weeks were filled with transition activities. Sarah worked closely with her replacement, Detective Inspector Michael Harrison, sharing years of accumulated knowledge about royal protection protocols. She was impressed by his professionalism and relieved to know that Prince George would be in capable hands. During this transition period, Prince George often included both Sarah and Detective Inspector Harrison in conversations, helping the new officer understand not just security procedures, but also the family's routines and preferences. His natural ability to make people feel comfortable served as an informal bridge between the outgoing and incoming protection officers. Sarah began attending meetings at the Metropolitan Police Academy to prepare for her new role. The curriculum development work was engaging and challenging in ways she had forgotten she enjoyed. She found herself energized by the prospect of creating training materials that could influence law enforcement practices across the country. One afternoon, as Sarah was reviewing some final security reports, Prince George approached her with another of his thoughtful questions. "When you start teaching at the academy, will you tell the new officers about our family and how protection really works?" he asked. "I'll certainly share appropriate lessons from my experience," Sarah replied, "though I'll always respect your family's privacy." "Of course." Prince George nodded approvingly, seeming to understand the balance between education and discretion. "I hope you'll tell them that the people they protect are real people with feelings and dreams," he added. "Sometimes I think adults forget that protection isn't just about stopping bad things from happening, but also about helping good things continue to grow." Once again, his insight surprised Sarah with its depth and wisdom. As her final day approached, Sarah realized that Prince George had given her something invaluable: the courage to pursue a path that aligned with her deeper sense of purpose. His gentle influence had helped her discover possibilities she might never have considered on her own, demonstrating a kind of leadership that empowered others to flourish. Sarah's final day as Prince George's protection officer arrived with the same crisp autumn weather that had marked the beginning of their journey together 8 years earlier. The morning routine proceeded as always, but there was an underlying awareness that this familiar pattern was coming to an end. During breakfast, Prince George presented Sarah with a farewell gift he had created himself. It was a bound collection of his drawings from over the years, chronicling their time together from his perspective. The early pages showed simple sketches of Sarah standing guard, while later drawings revealed increasingly sophisticated observations about her work and dedication. The final drawing in the collection showed Sarah standing in front of a classroom full of police officers, with the caption, "Mrs. Matthews sharing her knowledge to help protect many families." Below the drawing, Prince George had written, "Thank you for keeping me safe and for teaching me that good people should always have the chance to grow and help others." Sarah felt her composure waver as she looked through the collection. Each drawing represented not just artistic progress, but also the deepening understanding between a young prince and his protector. "This is the most meaningful gift I've ever received," she told him, her voice thick with emotion. The formal handover ceremony took place in the palace's security office, where Sarah officially transferred her responsibilities to Detective Inspector Harrison. Prince George insisted on being present for this transition, wanting to personally thank Sarah for her years of service and to welcome his new protection officer. "Detective Inspector Harrison," Prince George said with his characteristic formality and warmth, "Mrs. Matthews has taught me that the best protection officers don't just keep people safe. They also care about the people around them and help everyone do their best work." The young prince's words served as both a tribute to Sarah and guidance for his new protector. After the ceremony, Sarah and Prince George took one final walk through the palace gardens. The autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet as they followed paths they had walked together hundreds of times before. The familiar route felt different now, charged with the weight of conclusion and new beginnings. "I want you to know," Prince George said as they paused near his favorite oak tree, "that you helped me understand something important about leadership. Real leaders don't just tell people what to do. They help people discover what they're capable of becoming." Sarah realized that this 10-year-old had somehow reversed their roles, becoming her teacher in the most profound way. "You've taught me quite a lot too, Your Royal Highness," and Sarah replied, "about looking beyond immediate duties to see bigger possibilities, and about the importance of caring for the people around us." The mutual recognition of their shared growth felt like a fitting conclusion to their professional relationship. 6 months later, Sarah stood before her first class of new recruits at the Metropolitan Police Academy. As she began her lecture on executive protection principles, she thought about Prince George and the gentle way he had influenced her life's direction. Her teaching style incorporated lessons she had learned from him about the importance of seeing people as individuals with their own dreams and potential. The young prince's influence had extended far beyond their personal relationship. Through Sarah's teaching, his insights about leadership, empathy, and personal growth would now reach hundreds of future officers. His gentle guidance had created ripples that would touch countless lives in ways he might never fully know. Sarah had discovered that sometimes the most powerful influence comes not from authority or force, but from genuine care for others' well-being and growth. Prince George had demonstrated that true leadership means empowering people to find their own best paths, even when those paths lead away from you. In helping her find her calling as an educator, he had shown wisdom far beyond his years and changed not just her life, but potentially the lives of everyone she would teach in the years to come.